She works more. We're looking to launch, I guess, our lookbook and line sheet for spring, summer 2013, 14 in August.
Great. Can you walk us through a little bit of the process of some different tools that you've used for marketing that you think have been really helpful, and how you're going about making a lookbook? Because I think that's a good thing for a lot of newer artists and designers to know about.
Sure. So as far as, marketing at this point, obviously digital media, online media is the cheaper way to, or more affordable way to go when you are starting. Anything from advertising on your favorite blogs. If you can budget $150 a month, you can get the sort of, I don't know what the word would be, the audience. And it's kind of a slow and steady build. Running Facebook ads with good imagery is effective. Having a mailing list at your show, having to do deep presence even on a consignment level, all these things, even as a one-person business, do help to expand and have definitely proven valuable over the past 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And so how are you going about putting a lookbook together?
A lookbook is really, it's the brand and the looks all within a story. So I think that everything starts with an idea. My particular work has its sort of inspiration in kind of floral forms and kind of the reduction of floral forms. So those are very kind of feminine, lean or sort of on the work. So my lookbook would just begin by researching kind of color palettes, lighting, backdrops, all of those things, and putting them together. Pinterest boards, they allow you to have private boards now. Leah, my partner, have, I think, 4 separate boards at this point that all work towards just, branding materials, photos, lookbook kind of photo ideas, as well as material inspiration, design inspiration. So keeping everything organized, and allows you to not get too overwhelmed. Because once you get overwhelmed, you lose direction.
Right.
And it becomes more of a collage.
Yeah. Yes, that is a very good point. There has to be some focus, which can be challenging when, all the tools like Pinterest that you mentioned are wonderful, but they can lead you down so many different paths if you aren't kind of careful. I try and go on with a very specific, you're only looking for this, and just focus, or you're all over the place.
Yeah, sure.
So I met you and saw your work at the ACC show in Baltimore, and so there we got into talking a little bit about craft shows, which is, people are always trying to figure out which craft shows to do. And so that's a pretty big one to do. Did you do both the wholesale and the retail part of that show, or did you just do the retail part of that show?
I just did the retail. Doing kind of a large show for the first time of that scope, the wholesale would have been very overwhelming for me. So I don't even think I thought for a second about doing the wholesale. And I'd say through 2013, I'm doing strictly retail shows. I could potentially do wholesale for ACC next February, but I'm undecided.
Okay. So what are some, out of the shows you've done, what are maybe some of your favorite shows that you've done, and some lessons that you've learned through going through the process of doing different kinds of shows and trying to set up a booth and all of that good stuff?
So, aside from ACC, I've only done 2 other shows.
Okay.
I started doing the Lancaster Museum of Art. It has a artful dining or tasteful crafting show that I was invited to about 3 years ago, and I go back every fall. And then I applied to the Philadelphia Museum of Art craft show 2 years ago and was rejected as an emerging artist. And so the ACC was kind of my first go at it in 2 years, but really at this point having my images focused and spending those 2 years just continuing to sort of refine and kind of reduce down my perspective. And I feel like that's why I was successful. I mean, my advice would be to give yourself time to make sure that you're presenting sort of a clear concept and quality work.
And so once you got into the show, I think one of the kind of scary things for especially new artists is you get in and you're all excited, and then you realize that now you have to actually have a booth. You're like, oh, I just paid for a blank square. And I know we talked a little bit about booth design. So how did you go about coming up with the booth design that you had? And now that you've, done it 1 year, I know I personally, every year I buy a few more things, changed a little bit. So what did you do to prepare for that show, and that you think you would do differently if you were to do it again next year?
I actually do have, just to put it in perspective, since I was accepted into the ACC, I have 2 one-day shows coming up in April and May, and then I'm doing 3 of the Pennsylvania Guild shows, and I got into the One of a Kind in Chicago, I just found out.
Oh, awesome.
Really excited. So that being said, how I'm approaching sort of moving forward with these shows is simplifying the setup. So being able to do things kind of as quickly and as clean as possible. They don't give you a lot of time to set up, particularly for some of the smaller shows. So we're looking at a 2-hour setup time for all of these except Chicago. But keeping it clean, and really being able and willing to make the investment. I did do a hard wall booth that I had fabricated for ACC, and now it's done, and I have my booth that I can bring anywhere. So, for better or for worse, kind of biting the bullet, it's not that expensive if you can kind of, I have friends that do carpentry and do metal work, and were able to kind of cut me some labor deals, and I was able to pay for materials. So I really did luck out in that way, but it's not impossible even if you don't have those connections. You don't have to do hard walls. You could do a pipe and drape and make it work.
Right.
It was just a decision that I wanted to have hard walls. I like the look of it, and I think that it really helped me sell more work.
Okay, cool. And then you at the ACC show, if I remember correctly, you were just writing orders. Like, people weren't actually buying things and taking them with them, right?
No, I actually did all direct kind of walk-away retail. I took a few orders, which my advice would be to not do that, because when you think that you can fill orders, I'm still trying to get 2 out that are already 2 weeks late. So no, I tried to just kind of move what I had there.
And how did you determine how much inventory you felt like you needed to take with you? Because I think that's always a challenge. You want to make sure that you have enough so that, assuming you sell fabulously, that your booth isn't totally empty and you have things to sell, but you also don't want to be going home with this, all this inventory that you've now created, especially if you don't have shows lined up.
So that took quite a bit of research, and I can say that there aren't any hard and fast rules or clear answers, unfortunately. However, I'm not sure where it is on the site, but if you research all of these shows enough, you can find exhibitor reports. And I was able to look at a few reports that were in some, very obscure area on the ACC site where I could track within my category, which was wearables and accessories, what the average sales were for the exhibitors and their average price points. So I based it off of that, and also advice from people who have done the shows in the past. So I knew what my projected sales, what I wanted them to be, and I brought roughly 30 to 40% more inventory than that.
Okay. And so that worked for you?
It did, yeah.
Cool.
It wasn't empty when I was done, which was good.
Yeah, I was like, well, it would be great to be empty, but then it would be awkward for that little time. You're like, I have one piece.
Yeah, I know.
Never sure what to do with that. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about your designs and your knitting machine. I know I bought a knitting machine a couple months ago, as I told you that I'm not at work yet. But whenever I mention to anyone that I have a knitting machine, they don't even, they've never even heard of the thing before. So, first of all, how did you get into knitting machines? Because, somebody walked up to me and asked me if I wanted one. It seemed like a good idea. But otherwise, I don't know if I would have known about them.
So in 2002, I actually moved to Midcoast, Maine for a couple of years. Pretty recently out of college, and I was working in a laboratory up there, and I started hand knitting. There was a local yarn store down the street. I took 6 months of knitting lessons, and just mathematically, it worked for me, and the way that you could craft a textile and a garment at the same time really sort of drew me in. But I knew, should I want to move towards actual production, I needed to do it more quickly. So I started researching, how to do this, and found the idea of sort of a domestic knitting machine. And I got my first one, I think, 2 years after that.
Okay. Very cool. And so then and you mentioned flowers that are inspiring you right now. How do you go about coming up with the designs that you're going to create?
The first thing that I start with is the material. So I specialize in organic, sustainable meaning tencel, rayon from bamboo, and so organic, sustainable, and mill end. So mill end would be, I go to different closeouts in New York and buy, this is like a silk yarn. I'll have 3 pounds of it and kind of use the properties from this, because I've had a pretty technical textile education. I understand how that material is going to work when pushed into a textile. So I start swatching, and then, I don't know, you come up with some things like this, and then push those, or kind of look at your sort of inspiration or your images, and kind of feel or figure out how they're going to work. This would be kind of a couple of examples.
Oh, cool.
So it's really like a dialogue between kind of the stitch, the material, and then the shape. That's going to best serve the material as far as aesthetics.
Okay. And then how do you come up with your color palette?
My color palette, it's not necessarily a hard one. It's just that I inherently stick to more neutrals, just based on kind of the fact that I make accessories and I want them to be more timeless pieces and pass, from season to season, for many years. So I would say that's a pretty kind of quick answer. I also try to use as many undyed materials as possible. So sort of that natural linen color, natural cotton, wild silks, and then I'll push accent colors into the palette as it changes per season. So every season I will have a different accent color that kind of works as sort of a focal point and something a little fun, but I mainly stick to neutrals.
Okay.
Purely themselves.
Hey, that works. Do you have a goal of this becoming your full-time thing, or are you hoping it's always sort of along with other things?
That's a hard question to answer, because I've learned that I do like to have more than one kind of thing to focus on, just within day-to-day and work. So I would say that I'd be interested in this being about 50% of kind of what I do for work, and it's about that right now. So perhaps full-time, But it's risky. It's risky when you know that it's your small business that is kind of supporting you full time. So we'll see how it goes.
Right. Well, I think it's always, it's good to know what you like personality-wise and like to have, if you like to have different things going on, then why not? Because it also does, it does take a little bit of the risk away because you don't have everything landing in one pot.
Exactly.
Which is kind of nice. So do you have for someone that's just starting out, kind of any words of advice or things that you just totally wish that you had known when this popped into your head as an idea of something you wanted to do?
I would say to not be intimidated by kind of what other people are maybe presenting online, that everyone has a different story and a different kind of style of their business, and to just kind of take it slow and steady and really work towards mastering your craft. I would say don't rush anything because it's not sustainable. And if you're interested in really kind of moving forward as a craftsperson, the best thing to do is just like take it slow, keep your products kind of smaller in what you have to offer, and then gradually grow from there.
Have you seen in the last 2 years your designs change very much? Or do you feel like you started once you already really understood the process?
I definitely understood the process, and that's really just from the graduate degree. For better or for worse, they're expensive, but they are worthwhile. But I think that at this point, I've been able to make more saleable goods, things that are more seamless and like more refined. So as my work kind of moves through the months and the years, it becomes, at least I'd like to think, more timeless and more quiet. And those are like my goals kind of artistically.
Cool. And where did you go to school to get your master's degree?
It's called Philadelphia University now, but it used to be the Philadelphia College of